Hi, this is Mashnu, and I've been looking at your game, the game that you sent me. You play this game at chess.com, so this is a correspondence game, and I'm very happy to hear that, because correspondence chess is a very good way of to practice and improve your game, mainly because you have lots of time to think about your moves and try out on the analysis board different options. You also write that this was a very bad loss for you, and that you made some poor decisions in the opening, like the knight sacrifice, that hindered your chances for the rest of the game. I agree with you. This is absolutely true what you write here. The knight sacrifice was not a good decision. But let's have a look at the game move by move, so we can learn something from this. You started with e4, e5, and then you started developing your pieces. This is very good. This is simply healthy development, controlling the center and looking for active play with your pieces. Bishop to b5, now bishop to d6. It looks a bit strange, this move, bishop to d6, but it is not bad. One conclusion that we can already take here is that if the bishop goes to d6, blocking the d7 pawn, it means that black will have to develop his light square bishop this way and not this way. That means that we can expect black to move a6, b5, bishop b7. In the game here you played d4. A good move, challenging the center and opening the diagonal for your bishop to be developed. Now your opponent played queen to e7. I don't know if that's, well, I actually doubt very much if this is the correct move, because moving the queen so early in the game is something that you have to do only if you have to. Most probably your opponent was afraid that you would take on c6, and after he retakes you would take on e5, winning a piece. So probably that's the reason why he played queen to e7. There was actually a much easier way to solve this problem, a more active way as well, is to take on d4. He takes d4. This would justify the move bishop to d6, because then this diagonal now would be opened. After he takes d4, then knight takes d4 is the most logical continuation, and then probably black would castle, white can castle as well, rook to e8 now, and the knight could go to a beautiful square f5. Now this is also a consequence of the fact that this pawn is still here on d7, so f5 is available for the knight. This position is equal. In the game it was a bit strange what happened, because he played queen to e7. Well, your reaction is correct. He's trying to defend this e5 pawn, so what do? You play d5. So now this move queen to e7 looks a bit useless, because there is no pressure anymore on e5. Here your opponent played a6, attacking your bishop. Now this is one of the key moments in the game. Let's say one of the key moments in the start of the game, because here you have to make a decision. You have several options. One is to bring the bishop to a4, another one is to bring the bishop to this diagonal here to e2 for example, and the third option is to take on c6. In the game you chose to play bishop to a4. It's very important to understand that we need to find the most active squares for our pieces. Keeping the bishop on this diagonal would make sense if the pawn on d7 would not be there. Then we would be pinning this knight on c6, or with the idea to bring it to b3 if this pawn would not be here, because now it's on d5, so the bishop on b3 is also being blocked by its own pawns. So that means that bringing the bishop to this side of the board in this position is not a very correct decision. I think that we have to look at the two other options. To bring the bishop to e2 is one of them. Well, in fact, it would mean that you would have to admit that the development to this side was not perhaps something that you have to continue, so you have to go back. But remember, in this position, he has to do something about this threat on taking on c6, so knight to d4 is the most logical move, and after knight takes, e takes, queen takes, we have won here a pawn. So we don't need to be afraid of this. Another square for this knight is difficult to find. I mean, knight to e8 would be a bit ridiculous, because the knight from there cannot go to either c6 or e6. If it goes back to b8, it would be losing a tempo completely. Knight to a7, perhaps, to play later knight to b5. But anyway, here you could have placed black for a difficult decision. Knight to b4. Is this something? No. Then we play a3 simply, and the knight there is no place to go, so he loses a piece. You see, sometimes it's good to consider, to think about what's the problem for my opponent. So here, bishop to e2 would have been a good move. Another interesting option is to take on c6. If you take on c6, it would take here. Now, again, we have different options. We can take on d7, or we can take on b5. Taking on b5, then he would take back, or he would take on e4. These are the positions that when you play at chess.com or at any other correspondence website, correspondence chess, you have to use the analyze board here. That's this extra board that you get when you click on a certain button, and then you can try different variations and write them down. And this is the way that you can examine different positions in correspondence chess. So these are, well, let's continue just a little longer here. We could take here with check, and bishop takes would defend the pawn on b5. Black as active play. His two bishop can be developed into two active squares, and this pawn on e4 could become a target then. Let's go back to the game, because your decision was something else. After a6 you played bishop to a4. Still, there is nothing terrible happening. I mean, I said this is not perhaps the best way to play it. Bishop to e2 would have been better, strategically seen, to activate your pieces better. But here, after b5, you make, as you wrote yourself, a big mistake by taking on b5. There is actually only one or two, let's say two other options: bishop to b3 or taking on c6 again. What if bishop b3? If bishop b3, then, well, the knight is attacked on c6, so he must go away from here. If he goes to d4, it will be taken. If it goes to a5, that's, let's say, a more safe way to try to trade it for this bishop. Then perhaps we have to play here with white queen to e2 in order to defend the a4 pawn more, because black is also threatening to advance his pawn, chase away this knight from the defense of e4, and after it moves away, then to take on e4. So perhaps here queen to e2 is the correct move. The position here is, well, let's say equal, but it's it's perhaps a bit easier to play with black because of c5, c4 threatening, things like that. Let's see if there was another good option here. So this is bishop b3. Another option is of course to take on c6. We always must calculate all the possible captures in a position. B takes a4 is logical, and now we can take with check on d7, bishop takes d7, and here simply castle to keep our king safe. If we look right now at the position, we see that black has a double pawn here on the a file, so this pawn on a4 could become weak. On the other hand, he has a half open b file, so eventually a rook on b8 would prevent our bishop from development because the b2 pawn would hang. So there are good things and bad things about this position, but it is absolutely very well playable for white. Let's go back to the game. We left here after b5. Knight takes b5. It looks very aggressive, and well, you see, one of the things that happens a lot when we play a game is that either we tend to panic sometimes, or we think that we must attack, and both things are wrong. I mean, panicking in a situation, never do it. Always just keep calm, keep looking what happens in every different option. The idea of that you have to attack, well, we like very much those beautiful grandmaster games where there is beautiful attacks with sacrifices and things, but they are always based on logical ideas and logical consequences, and in fact this sacrifice of taking on b5, it leads to this position where still black has no trouble. The only compensation that we have from this sacrifice is that we have here two potential passed pawns, but they are very difficult to activate now. Perhaps in an endgame it could be a weapon to have this a pawn that could advance, but right now with so many pieces on the board, black controlling all these queenside fields, it's not enough for white. Your opponent played knight to d4 here, and you took on d4. He took back, and now you played bishop to g5. I understand that you are trying to get some active play, and he's threatening to take on e4 now. Perhaps this is something that would have been good to think about in this position, that if you take on d4, this e file is going to be opened, so the e4 pawn is going to be weak. Take. Also, I don't know if you saw this, but there is also a threat here of knight takes d5 because the pawn on e4 is pinned. That means that something like f3 here would not work to defend this because of knight takes d5. There are many tactics in this game. You played bishop to g5, pinning the knight, and of course now he can take on e4 with check. He didn't do it. It would have been, by the way, a good move for black to take simply with check, winning a tempo. And now moving the queen to e2, well, simply trading is enough to win the game, because you get to black gets to an endgame with a piece more. But well, he didn't take on e4. He gave a check on b4 here, and now soon you lost the second piece here. You played bishop to d2, and now he takes on e4, and now white is in serious trouble. You see, this is also the consequence of not castling early in the game. That's really something for you to remember. In the opening, control the center, that's what you did. Develop your pieces, that's also what you did, and then castle. So this kind of nasty things don't happen. King safety first, and only then start eventually attacking. You castled now here, but well, it's late because d2 falls. There was no other solution. Queen to g4, you attack the pawn on g7. Your opponent sees that and castles himself. Now you play c3. Well, there's not much to. There are not many alternatives. Well, let's say perhaps bishop to d3 would be an idea. Now that black has castled, to see if we can try to attack here, perhaps, or perhaps bringing play a3 first and bringing a rook to d1 to threaten to take here, and then the d2 bishop would fall. Here, well, f5 is a very good move for black. Defends e4 enough and attacks the queen. So it's not easy. Actually, it's a very difficult position for white. It's I don't find any saving variation here. In this kind of position, was perhaps bishop to d3 or rook to d1 would be an idea to try to attack here, and perhaps later lift the rook to h3. But it's all general ideas. I think if we go on calculating variations, black is defending well in any case. It's a piece up, and that's actually too much. c3 was played. Now he takes on c3. You take back, and then knight takes c3. Queen to d4, attacking the bishop on d2. He takes your bishop on b5, you take the bishop on d2. Each time pieces are traded, the difference in material becomes more and more clear, that black has a piece more. Bishop to b7, attacking your pawn on d5, activating his bishop and linking the two rooks. Rook a to e1, attacking the queen on e7. The queen goes to d6. Now you go back to b1. Well, here actually we can see by the way you're playing is that it's impossible for white to make a good plan. So you are attacking pieces, well, hoping that you will make a tactical mistake and perhaps lose a piece somewhere. And of course, many times it happens. It happens that your opponent blunders back, and you can still save the game. But well, let's see. Let's say that it's in terms of plan making. There is nothing actually very good for white. He defends with c6. You place your rook on d1. Rook a3. Take. And now here, instead of trading queens, he decides to take on c6 with a threat of mate on g2. Perhaps here you played very fast, or perhaps you wanted to get rid of the game and allow him to checkmate on g2. There is no way. I mean, of course you can play f3 here to prevent this mate, but it's actually postponing the defeat. There is no way to save really this game. You took on d7, he checkmated on g2. This was the end of the game. I think that the best advice that I can give you are, well, actually three things. First of all, remember that in the opening the steps to follow are to control the center, to activate your pieces, develop them, and to castle. Another thing that's important for you to understand is that it's very useful to practice basic tactics. There is a website called chesstempo.com, I think. Well, there are actually many websites develop to practice tactics. And there are also many books written on the general ideas to learn tactics. It's always useful. You know, when I go to a blitz tournament, you know, in blitz games, tactics is one of the most important things, because many things are missed by our opponents. So all kind of tactical tricks and pins and discovered attacks, things like that, are very useful to practice. When I go to a blitz tournament, before I do it, I always solve a few tactical puzzles, just to keep my mind sharp to this kind of ideas. So that's a very useful thing to do. Another thing that I would advise you is continue to play slow games like this. Whether you play it on chess.com or on chessworld.net or any other website for correspondence chess, it doesn't really matter. The important thing is you really take your time, and when you do it, use the analyze board. Almost every chess website where you can play this turn-based chess, correspondence chess as it used to be called, have this analyze board option. There's a button, you click there, and then you can try out different variations, different options, and be patient. Be patient is the most important thing in correspondence chess. Many times we make the mistake, and I know it from my own experience because I've made that same mistake many times as well, is that we play correspondence chess and we play so many games that we tend to play very fast. So we see that is our move in the next game, so we click on the board and we say, oh yeah, this and this is happening, I do that. And then in fact we are playing a kind of blitz game instead of a correspondence game. So keep the amount of games small, not many games at the same time. Let's say play about maximum of 5 or 6 games at the same time, not 20 or 30 like many people do. And the quality of your games, of your moves, is much more important than your rating, much more important than how many games you can play simultaneously. No, it's all about doing the right moves, making the right decisions. Alright, well, I hope you can continue developing your playing strength, and that you found this video instructive for that. If you have another game, you can send it to me, and well, you know, I explained on my video the procedure. If you find this useful, please go to my website and click on the donate button, and I wish you all the best and very much success in chess and improvement. Alright, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.